Forget gurus. Forget anyone claiming to be an online business expert without going through the challenges of entrepreneurship themselves. The Real Money, Real Business podcast is here to prove the best insights in online business comes from your fellow online business builders. We dig into stories of entrepreneurs selling their business on the Empire Flippers marketplace so that you can learn how they made their business profitable, how they overcame obstacles, and what lessons they learned in their online journey. If you want to take your business and your knowledge to the next level, you've come to the right podcast. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Real Money, Real Business podcast. We record these interviews so potential buyers have more information about the seller and the business to help them make a buying decision. Before we dive in, let's go over a brief summary of the business. It is an Amazon Associates subscription, affiliate, and display advertising business created in June of 2018 in the sports, hobbies, food and beverages, religion and spirituality, and real estate niches. The average monthly revenue for the business is $4,872 and makes an average of $4,267 per month in net profit. The assets included in the sale are 5 domains and all site content and files, 3 email lists with 1142, 1,953, and 1185 subscribers, respectively. Social media accounts include Facebook, YouTube, and Pinterest, SOPs, and just as a disclaimer, you must currently have an approved AdSense account before purchasing this business to assure a successful migration of the business. And for everyone listening, you can visit empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing 55748 to learn more about the business, or you can unlock this listing to start your due diligence if you're interested in purchasing this asset. So that's a brief overview of the business for sale. Let's hear from the seller with me today. So welcome to the show, Ricky. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm looking forward to learning more about you and your business. So to start us off, can you tell us a little bit about your background in building and running online businesses?
Yes, absolutely. So I've been in the digital marketing space now for nearly a decade. Started out building sites for other clients, and then over time said, all right, well, I really want to be doing this for myself and figure out a way to build a passive income doing so. Of course, seeking out the sources of information at the time, Niche Pursuits, Empire Flippers, you guys were really very influential early on and all the way through the process. So, helped me kind of steer the creation of my business in the right direction right from the beginning. So anyhow, that was sort of the background of how I was able to start to come up with the idea of what I was going to do, learning by experience, and studying as much as I possibly could about SEO, about digital marketing, and everything included within that ballpark.
Got it. And as I mentioned on the introduction portion of this is a 5-site package with all different niches. So what made you choose the specific niches that you did?
Right. This isn't one niche, this is multiple. And as you mentioned there, within those multiple niches, what made me choose those was particularly areas of opportunity as well as some level of interest in those topics. There are multiple topics and there are multiple opportunities within those, keywords to target, almost endless. So yeah, just really very creative in that process of selecting multiple niches and then saying, okay, which one am I going to really run with here of these 5 sites, building these out and seeing where they would go from the beginning up to this point. And they've all been relatively successful.
Very cool. So you mentioned you transitioned from doing this type of work as a job, wanting to do this for yourself, to create passive income. Seems like you've built it up to a certain point. So why are you deciding to sell the business now?
At this point, my wife and I are having a little one on the way, and we're interested in buying a home soon. So this would be kind of a nice down payment and a way to make that step forward there.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very cool. So it's been a bit of time. You built this starting in 2018. After these several years, what did you learn from building this business that just seemed to work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just to clarify, it's actually several of these domains were started before that point in time. So some of the index history goes back even further than that. But really, the point where it started to take off and I really started to scale the business was around then. That's always an advantage to have a domain that's been, aged for quite some time. So just wanted to make sure that's stated that these have been stable and they've been around for quite a while. But what I've learned from this experience is that a lot of the information that is out there in terms of best practices with SEO and website building is absolutely spot on. I mean, if you follow the game plan, if you test for yourself, really make something successful out of that. So what I learned in particular was that creating a system and a process around everything was the way to scale. So in other words, selecting keywords to target, hiring a writer to create the content for that. And then, a lot of times that's sort of the stopping point. Maybe you get some backlinks, things like this, which I didn't do much in terms of backlinking. But the area where I really took things to the next level was finding a way to actually repurpose that written content into video content and optimize my site's performance overall by creating a YouTube presence as well as a Pinterest presence. So really, I just focused on the search engines, right? From Google, and you've got social media search engines like YouTube and Pinterest, but those are all search engine based. And so my methodology was to just stay within that framework and create a system that I could repeat over and over again. There are multiple niches within this portfolio, but like I was mentioning before, some of them are areas of interest and they're all across the board just areas of opportunity. So because I had this system and process in place and figured out a way to make it work from the first, early tests and then take that over to 5 different niches, I mean, that's where you can see that this system and process works extremely well. It's repeatable, it's scalable, and it's proven over time.
Very nice. And with this system, with the different tests that eventually formed this system, was there anything that you tested out or tried that didn't work?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think early on, what I learned was to not spread too thin. So in other words, focus on content clusters around a certain topic, around a certain area of information. That seems to work best versus spreading thin across, you could take a category and target certain areas, but it's not all tightly relevant. So focusing on content clusters really seems to work much, much better, as well as taking some of the older content now, because like I said, these domains have now aged for a while. A lot of the URLs for some keywords that I've targeted that are ranking for a substantial amount of time, I found it very useful to go through and have a writer create a fresh, revision of that content, as well as on YouTube, create a fresh video for that content. And a lot of times what I'm seeing is that I'm getting the old video to rank as well as the new video to rank. And the blog post itself is getting refreshed and updated and therefore being pushed up in the search engines. So within that, ultimately content clusters and revamping content that has driven traffic, but just making it fresh for the most relevant search terms in the current time.
Got it. So you mentioned a few things there. You said creating content around clusters, which is pretty impressive that you did that for 5 sites, which I guess speaks to the effectiveness of your system. Then you talked about just updating older content, and you also talked about using different channels to drive traffic to the sites. So can you describe the amount and the type of work you do on this business for maintenance?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say it's averaged out over time. I mean, there's been weeks or months when I've put in a bit more work, and there's definitely been some where I've not needed to put much at all. It really at this point is pretty self-sufficient. Like if you were to come in and purchase, if a buyer was coming and purchase this portfolio of sites, it's really up to them as to how much they want to scale this out. It really takes, if you're going to do maybe an article a week, something like that, you're only going to put in a few hours. If you're going to scale that up a bit more and add content beyond that, I mean, every website manager sort of understands what their framework is in terms of time that it takes to do that. But as far as a pretty hands-off process, I've gotten it down rather well because, I have a steady team on the back end of this, all contractors, but they understand what it takes. There's not much variance between any one task. So if it's creating a blog post for any of the sites, it's going to follow the same format. Uploading from the virtual assistant, it's very much the same from each one to the next. Same thing with the voiceover specialist who does the recordings and then uploading to the YouTube channels. I mean, really, I've gotten it down to a level of efficiency, which I'm very proud of. I think has worked out quite well. And to come back full circle to that, it's just, how much you want to reinvest and scale into the business is about how much time it would take, but it's relatively hands off and passive.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is if you want to do more content, then that will understandably take more time, but you also have your contractors. So
content is king, as we all know.
Yep. So sounds like it's humming along nicely. If you were to keep the business, what are some ways you would try to grow it?
Yeah, I would basically add more content on a more frequent basis. I would continue to create and expand on those content clusters like I'd mentioned. The nice thing is now, over the years of being indexed on Google and having the data to refer to, you can see how these sites are being kind of viewed by Google, if you will, and saying, okay, this is an area I want to expand on because it seems like I'm already being associated. These sites are already being associated with these keyword phrases. So if I continue to build around that, I should have more success. And then almost recreating the hits already, the blog posts and the videos that have done well, create a new version of them and just kind of rinse and repeat. It sounds simple, but in a way it is, because now there's enough traction and enough established base. That's the next level. That's the next area of growth. On top of that, I would say one thing I really did not do, and which is some SEO's wheelhouse, is doing backlinking and adding these sites to an even bigger portfolio of sites and finding ways to synergize with backlinks, things like that. That's something I really didn't do much of at all. So, I'm sure it would boost up performance almost immediately if you could do that, if you had the power to do that. So that would be an area of opportunity for sure. So within that, I would actually say that the email lists, I've had very great success. Whenever I had a plugin for email opt-ins, I was able to create a drip campaign within those niches, within the emails that were coming in for those targeted lists. So again, if you had affiliate deals highly targeted to this type of traffic and this audience, if you had a particular skill set in email outreach, that could be a huge benefit, as well as the other portion, which we really hadn't discussed much, but within multiple of these sites, there are sort of directory listings, which do list services that are associated with products sold within that service. And you could do a bit more outreach to drum up business within service listing end of things, which I've kind of let that come in and just on a drip basis, as it came in, as service providers would find the directory listings and then pay to get onto the directory. But there's more area of opportunity in that as well. So again, you can look at things from the affiliate end of things. You can look at things from saying, how can I do more with lead generation within this? So there's quite a bit of opportunity within these sites that I think a service provider and a business, a website buyer could really get creative with.
Very nice. So you said there's revenue being generated through affiliates, through lead generation, which is great to hear because having multiple sources of income come to a website just strengthens the website, reduces the risk. But on the topic of risk, what do you think are the biggest risks with this business that a buyer should be aware of?
I think that within the areas of risk, just taking the idea that if you don't do anything with these sites, if you just buy and hold and don't do anything at all, of course, over time, traffic can dip, things like that. However, on the flip side, if you're actively managing these sites and you're doing something to build them up, you're kind of balancing off your risk and you're taking some of that risk off the table. One of the things that I've always focused on from building these up was to never do anything black hat with them. So again, I probably missed some opportunity, right, with not doing some sketchy things, but some people will do that and they say there's great success in doing that. It wasn't anything I ever did. I also made sure that each of these sites were very balanced in terms of their traffic flow. So it wasn't any just like one web page that was getting 90% of the traffic. It was very, very well diversified across each of the web pages and YouTube videos and things like that. So I think in terms of risk, when you look at an affiliate sort of passive business model, content business like this is, I would say it's relatively limited in terms of risk. I think it's a pretty stable, solid business that's been around for quite a while. It's stood through the test of time where sometimes I would be putting in multiple bits of content every month and other times not so much. And so it really has gone through the flows with that and has maintained its stability. So I would say you can bank on this being a relatively risk-free stable business.
Yeah, well said. I mean, of course, all websites that bring in organic traffic there is a degree of risk with like the Google algorithm, but it is a great sign that even through the Google algorithm updates that the sites have essentially stayed resilient, have stood the test of time. It's always great to see. Well, that's great. So just some final housekeeping questions here. How much support are you willing to offer buyers?
I'm willing to do, the standard 30 days of email, Skype support, things like that. I really want to make sure that, somebody who buys this site or a team of buyers, whatever it may be, if they're interested to learn the system and the process that I've created around this and make it successful, I'm more than willing to help with that pass off. I mean, in the process of building these sites, I've paid consultants to help me learn some things along the way. And in that process, when I learned about particularly how to scale this out into YouTube, Pinterest, things like that, I turned it around and ended up teaching them how to apply the system to their sites. And so they have a much bigger portfolio of websites than I have, but they were able to scale it up with equal success. So, again, I want to be a resource. I don't have really put a lot into this business, I care about the success of it. So I would want to make sure that somebody who buys it feels that they have an understanding of how to run it. And of course, it's their business at that point. They can run it however they choose. But as far as learning, hey, this is the point where I've left it, but here's some of the ideas I have, keywords to target, systems and processes, team, all that kind of stuff, what I can pass on, I'm more than willing to do that and make sure that it gets a really positive transition.
Very good. That's great to hear. And would you commit to a non-compete as well?
Yes, I would be willing to commit to a non-compete.
All right. And are you open to something like an earnout?
Yeah, I would say an all-cash deal is preferential. I would be willing to hear, any deals that are out there in terms of an earnout, but definitely an all-cash deal would be preferred.
Yep, definitely. Okay, and last two questions. Putting yourself in the shoes of a buyer, why do you think this is a business worth buying?
Oh, I think that for one, straight away, if you have an interest in anything to do with content businesses, just like this, the hardest part is getting it off the ground, right? The hardest part is the first 2 years or more that you put into the business and figuring out what's going to work, what isn't going to work. You can see once you get some traction like this has, that you're able to get some data from Amazon and say, this is what's selling. Let me go find another affiliate deal that's out there that might have a better payout. Things like this that I've started to do over the not so distant past. So you're able to, kind of already have this established baseline. You have the index success from Google and from YouTube and from Pinterest, which are not easy to build up, and they are hard to kind of get in good standings with. So it's already there. You've already got that under your belt when you're taking it over, and then you can just scale up. And I mean, from the people that I've spoken with, like I said, consultants I've spoken with, interviews from Niche Pursuits, Empire Flippers, this is really the area where I've heard it's easier to scale up from this point on versus starting from scratch and saying, all right, let me just test out everything from brand new and come into this with no background or no data on anything, just hope for the best. I mean, you've already got this sort of proven system. You can just build on that and scale up. You've also got a website creator here, myself, who has been taking the right approach from day one with these and making sure that I'm here to be a resource for you. So I would be more than willing to help out in that respect. So again, it's kind of a win-win. You just got to come in with the right mindset, scale this up, build it out, and I think you'll have great success.
Yep. And not only that, it's 5 of these, right?
Right.
Yeah. So very cool. Last thing is just, is there anything you'd like to add that you think I might have missed during the interview?
I think we covered pretty much everything there. Again, if there's any specific questions that a potential buyer would have to ask, I'm more than willing to answer. Happy to help out. And yeah, so if there's anything we missed, please ask. But I think we covered everything pretty thoroughly.
Okay. Well, that said, I think this is the perfect place to wrap up here. So, Ricky, thank you very much for sharing your story and joining us on today's episode. And I hope your business is purchased in the near future and by the right buyer.
All right. Thank you so much, Nick. I appreciated your time, and this was a great interview. Thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. To learn more and see if this listing has already been sold, head over to empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing number 55748. And if you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description to go straight to the listing. And once you've unlocked this listing, you'll be given everything you need to know about this business. So until next time, enjoy your digital journey.